Naming random athletes. It's a pastime for many sports fans. And if you're anything like me, you're very competitive at this pastime. You want to name the most obscure and out of left field athletes that you possibly can to almost beat your friends at this game. I want to introduce you to maybe the most obscure MLB player of all time. First things first, I'm going to set the parameters for what I am considering an MLB player. I'm considering an MLB player to be someone that is on the MLB roster for one day, and here's the reasoning behind it. After one day on an MLB roster, the player will get health benefits for life covered by the team. Now, their stats won't show up on a site like Baseball Reference, ESPN, something like that if they are never in a game, but as long as they are on that roster for one day, they're getting those health benefits. Now that we have that parameter set, let's jump all the way back to 2021 in our search for the most obscure player maybe in the entire modern baseball era. So 2021 was a weird year. To get the full picture on that, we need to jump back a year to 2020. And during 2020, there was a worldwide phenomenon that was going on. YouTube does not really like when people talk about it, so I will be censoring the exact events, but if you were alive during that time, you know what I'm talking about. So in 2020, there's this worldwide phenomenon. MLB does not have a full season. Now we jump forward to 2021. MLB is starting to have a full season for the first time as the world comes back to some sort of normalcy. But that worldwide phenomenon that was going on in 2020 is still kind of going on in 2021. For that reason, the MLB rosters are kind of wonky. There's a lot of players that are missing time due to this phenomenon. So one of those teams that has weird rosters during this time is the Cleveland Indians. Yes, 2021 was a weird year for the Indians. It was the last year that they would be called the Indians. The Cleveland baseball franchise had decided to make a name change at this point, but they hadn't decided on a singular name yet. Cleveland finds themselves in a precarious situation here. They're already in catcher trouble. Roberto Perez has been nursing an injury, so they signed veteran catcher Wilson Ramos to be the new backup for the team, as Austin Hedges has kind of stepped up into that starter role. The problem here is that Wilson Ramos goes and has a season-ending injury. So now the Guardians are in an even tougher spot. They're going to need to go find a catcher quick to be the backup for Austin Hedges. Not every player can be a backup catcher. Catcher's a very tough defensive position. So they need to go get an actual catcher. So naturally you look at AAA. Ryan LaVarnway is the starter there. He is being affected by the worldwide phenomenon that I cannot mention. So maybe you look at his backup, Zach Collins, also out with the worldwide phenomenon. Jump down to AA. Maybe that's the next step. Bo Naylor is the pick there. There's a problem with that. He's a top prospect. Top prospects you don't want to bring up too early, as it starts their service time clock. The sooner that their service time clock starts ticking, the sooner they're going to be a free agent. The sooner you're going to have to pay these players. The Cleveland baseball franchise is notorious for not paying their players. They do not want to start a promising prospect's clock too early and then risk losing them to free agency. So Bo Naylor is not an option. You look at his backup, Brian Lavastida, and at the time he was also a top prospect. So for the same reason, Naylor's not getting called up. You're not going to bring up Lavastida for a spot emergency catcher role. Where do we go next? We jump all the way down to Lake County. And here's where we're introduced to maybe the most random player in modern baseball, Gianpaul Gonzalez. Now off rip, just to get an idea of how obscure he is, this is the only video I can find across the entire internet of Gianpaul Gonzalez. It's a homemade style video shot for his high school travel ball team, where he was teammates with future big leaguer David Bednar. But Gianpaul Gonzalez was born in Tal Alto, Puerto Rico in 1996. In the 2014 MLB draft, he was drafted by Cleveland in the 20th round out of high school and went on to sign with them. From there, he went on to have a long minor league career from 2014 all the way to 2021,
where he spent time at almost every stop from rookie ball all the way to AAA. He spent most of his time with Single-A Lake County, however, which is where he was directly before he got the call to the big leagues. Now, as far as Gonzalez's major league career, there's not much that you really can find. And if it wasn't for a few articles on Cleveland.com and by the beat writers for the Cleveland Indians at the time, his entire major league career would be nothing more than a blip on the MLB transactions page. Because unfortunately, he never ended up getting into a major league game and never recorded a major league stat. But that did not stop Gonzalez from taking in the moment. In his interview with Mandy Bell on the topic of being called up, he recalls the moment that he shared with his father after he was overcome with joy after hearing the news that he will be completing his childhood dream of making it to the major leagues. He was even able to have his father and brother in attendance for his first game ever in the major leagues. And while he never actually got into the game, he was given jersey number 66 and served as the team's backup catcher from the day he was called up on August 31st, all the way until he was sent back to Columbus on September 2nd, ending his brief major league career. And hey, say what you want about a career that is as short as his, but he made it. And that is something that the vast majority of baseball players can never say. I would have loved to see Gianpaul get into the game, but regardless, his career will go down as one of the biggest anomalies in sports history.
So next time you're trying to stump your friends in a good old-fashioned baseball nerd off, remember Gianpaul Gonzalez.